Protests over rejection of HKTV license bid continue. A fatal explosion at a Yunlong tofu factory. And a state of emergency in New South Wales amid raging wildfires.
Good evening. Protesters have staked out the area outside the central government offices for a second day over the administration's refusal to explain why Hong Kong Television Network was not granted a free-to-air TV license. Lawmakers from the Democratic faction, meanwhile, want to use LegCo's special powers to demand a government explanation. Rani Samtani reports.
They're all set for a second night of protest outside these central government offices. Many of them are Hong Kong Television Network employees who now face job loss after the government refused to grant the company a license. But some came here just out of empathy.
I came here last night and I saw what was happening, and I was watching, and I know people here. But I was here last night and I will stay tomorrow night and tonight. I think I will stay for a while.
Because we want to fight for the justice. We want to know the reason. Why it's so secret to tell us the reason. That's what we are fighting for.
The protesters have come prepared for a long stay. They have tents, beds, tables, and chairs, and have also brought a lot of food and drinks.
Mr. Lee, who works for HKTV, says they simply want to know why they lost to the other licensed bidders. Young Chi Ho, chairman of HKTV's staff union, says they have no intention of staying there for weeks, but then they won't give up just like that either. Lawmakers from the Democratic faction want to use LegCo's special powers to get some answers from the government.
There are lots and lots of doubts about how the government has come up with its final decision, and the government has not been able to tell us why. So we are hoping to use the P&P power of the LegCo to force the government to provide these papers to us before the IT and broadcasting panel meeting on November 8th.
The HKTV debate has called into question whether Executive Council decisions should be made public when there is broad public opposition. The government said collective responsibility means the details involved in reaching EXCO decisions have to stay confidential. But former Civil Service Secretary Joseph Wong says confidentiality does not mean the government cannot explain.
The government did list 11 factors which they have considered before coming to decision. Now, it's for the government to then explain among the 11 factors what are the factors which weigh against HKTV, which makes it a loser.
HKTV chairman Ricky Wong was mummed today on his way to work. But he said on Facebook earlier that Hong Kong should unite to safeguard justice and the rule of law. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
In other news, one person died and 4 others were injured in an explosion at a soybean product factory in Yunlong this afternoon. Firemen said an old wood-burning boiler had blown up. Jenny Lam reports.
The tofu factory is in part1 in Yunlong. The roof of the building caved in, sending wooden planks and sheets of metal flying into the surrounding. Firemen searched for people who might have been trapped inside. Of the 5 people injured, 2 are from outside Hong Kong. 3 people were hit by debris, 2 were scalded by steam, and 1 of them later died in hospital. Police received a call at around 1 p.m. that a boiler in the tofu factory had blown up. According to the acting commander of the Fire Services Department's New Territories North Division, Lau Wai Kwong, there are 2 boilers in the premises, and it is the one that used wood for fuel that blew up. The other boiler uses diesel, and firefighters had to remove the rest of the fuel to make sure the area is safe. Workers there said the factory has been running for about 30 years, and between 7 and 10 people work in there every day. This delivery worker explains that it takes 2 people to work the wood-burning boiler, one to load the fuel and the other to steam the tofu. Officials from the Lands and Buildings departments inspected the factory to check for any illegal structure. The owner is helping with the investigation. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Thick smog shrouded much of northeastern China this morning, tying up traffic and creating travel headaches and hazards. Visibility was down to less than 50 meters in many areas. Many schools and highways had to be closed, and buses and flights were cancelled. The density of fine particulate matter in the air was more than 24 times higher in the city of Harbin than what the World Health Organization considers safe. As the temperature drops, coal burning increases to keep buildings heated, and that means more air pollution. Amid growing frustration from the public, the central government has begun launching anti-pollution initiatives, including cutting down on the use of coal.
New South Wales declared a state of emergency after firefighters continued to battle the blaze of the most destructive wildfires ever to strike Australia's most populous state. With more than 50 fires spreading fast and hotter weather conditions ahead, authorities fear the blazes will trigger one monster fire that'll be impossible to douse. Raging fires have made it one dire situation in New South Wales.
We have firefighters coming from all around the state, but the size of the fires that we have at the moment are that big, some of them travelling 30 kilometres in one day. We literally have firefighters on the ground at all of these fires trying to stop them.
At least 15 wildfires are burning out of control, including a massive bushfire near Lithgow, west of Sydney. The blazes are so bad, several communities in the Blue Mountains are self-evacuating to safer grounds.
Today is more about preparation, getting everything in order, making sure you got all your important things in one spot. And looking after pets.
That includes rescuing other critters in need, like this baby possum. His whiskers may be singed, but he's out of harm's way now. With stronger winds kicking up and a drop in humidity, the fires are expected to wreak even more havoc later today and tomorrow. Crews are scrambling to ensure the battery of blazes do not spread into one monster fire.
Throughout this afternoon and into this evening, there will continue to be quite a number of aggressive, high-risk strategies being deployed right across these fire grounds.
To date, 58 fires are burning across the state, with 10 uncontained. So far, one man has died, 208 homes have been destroyed, and another 122 damaged since the fires broke out last Thursday. The fires have destroyed about 14,000 hectares of bushland. So firefighters have spent the last 4 days trying to contain the blazes with the help of 6 water-bombing helicopters. Police in Greece are looking for answers after a routine search revealed a young blonde girl living among a group of gypsies. As James Aiken reports, the discovery has sparked an international investigation to figure out who the mystery girl is and where she came from.
It began during a routine police check for illegal activities on the outskirts of the central town of Farsala. About 2,000 gypsies, or Roma as they are called, live in mostly prefabricated homes in the settlement. But as police went about their sweep for illegal drugs, one sharp-eyed investigator noticed a girl peeking out from underneath a blanket. He thought it was odd that the young girl looked nothing like her parents. When police began asking questions, the couple gave conflicting accounts of how the child ended up with them.
Our client's claim is that we never abduct this child. We've just adopted with an way non-legal. That's where we can confess it.
Initial claims that the girl, known as Maria, was adopted soon revealed that she had been found outside a supermarket. Police have since learned the couple has registered 14 children in 3 different cities in a bid to bilk the social assistance system. But investigators also want to know if they have a child trafficking case on their hands.
If they wanted to do so, they probably will sell it so far. The child is about 5 years old, and it's still in this family. They loved him, they loved her, and they took her as her own child.
A 40-year-old woman and 39-year-old man have been charged with abduction and will appear in court soon. DNA tests have confirmed they are not the biological parents of Maria, who is now being cared for by a children's charity in Athens. She only speaks a few words of the local dialect, and police think she may be from Northern or Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, Interpol is searching for a match of the girl's DNA from elsewhere, in an unusual case that has police trying to locate the missing parents of a child instead of the other way around. James Aiken, TVB News.
In Syria, 31 people were killed and dozens wounded after a suicide bomber blew himself up on a busy street on the outskirts of Hama. As Alan Booknia reports, the bomber was driving a truck packed with 1.5 tons of explosives.
This amateur video shows masked gunmen preparing a truck before it drives off. Seconds later, there's a huge explosion followed by gunfire. According to the pro-rebel organization, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the attack targeted an army checkpoint, but most of the people killed were civilians. The observatory said the bomber was from the Nusra Front, an al-Qaeda affiliate that frequently uses suicide bombers to attack military and political targets. Pictures from Syrian television show the aftermath of the explosion. Syria's 2.5-year-old conflict began as a peaceful protest against the government of President Bashar al-Assad. But it turned into a civil war, with anti-government fighters being joined by hardline Islamists, many of them with links to al-Qaeda. According to figures from the United Nations, more than 100,000 people have been killed in the fighting. Meanwhile, there's confusion in efforts to convene an international conference to end the civil war. The Arab League announced Sunday talks will take place in Geneva next month, but Syria's United Nations envoy denied any date had been set. Even now, it remains unclear whether either side is willing to negotiate. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
In Egypt, 3 people were killed when gunmen on a motorcycle fired at wedding guests outside a Coptic Christian church in Cairo. Witnesses said the masked assailants fired randomly into the crowd of people that was leaving the church. It's unclear if those killed were Christian. Coptic Christians make up 10% of Egypt's 85 million people. They generally coexisted peacefully with the country's Muslim majority, but the army's overthrow of Islamist President Mohamed Morsi in August has been followed by attacks on Christian churches and property. Egyptian anti-riot police fired birdshot and tear gas at hundreds of supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi. The demonstrators were mainly students from a Muslim university who were trying to march to the site where hundreds were killed when security forces stormed a sit-in in August. They threw rocks at the security forces who blocked their path. Sunday marks the second day of unrest outside Al-Azhar University. It's the Sunni Muslims' most prominent school. Demonstrations in Egypt have been almost non-stop since Morsi's ouster, July 3rd.
And still ahead in our newscast, taxi driver put on probation for stealing passengers' belongings. Mayho House in Shekip May revitalized to become a youth hostel. And pictures of pumpkin carving from the U.S.